Morning glory and evening grace, America. I'm Hugh Hewitt, joined by Rear Admiral Mark Montgomery, retired United States Navy. Admiral, welcome. He's Senior Fellow for the Foundation for the Defense of Democracies. Before I go to my questions, Admiral, what do you make of the exchange between the Iranians and the United States over the weekend, President Trump's gaggle in the White House today?
I think that the United States is putting real pressure on Iran. We've got this blockade is real. It's stopping 18 to $20 billion a month worth of exports. Probably 95% of their exports. The Iranians know it. They're very scared about the idea that we would open up the rest of the Gulf to others to transit through a secure access. And as a result, they're striking out. And President Trump did this exactly right. He said, look, they didn't hit the first time. We let it go. The second time, when they were firing at UAE, we did a proportionate response against the weapons that fired at us. I think if it happens again, we might be disproportionate. You only put up with this so many times before you go disproportionate and escalate. But he's trying to keep escalation management in his hands right now, and that's why he did only a proportional response.
Okay, so I have two questions. First of all, Operation Freedom, escort duty for getting the ships trapped and perhaps some ships in to fill and get them out. Do you see that returning?
I do. I think, three reasons. One, as part of negotiations, we have to say this is 100% international law says you cannot limit transit passage in international waterways. And we, as a country that has enforced this for either 80 or 250 years, depending how you look at our Navy, have enforced this traditional maritime law. Second, Iran can't be perceived as controlling the Strait of Hormuz at the end of the negotiations. It needs to be you tried to block people from going, and
I think we're
you
breaking
were
up.
unable
Okay.
to succeed. And then third, it's helping out partners with economic relief.
All right, now, Admiral, I did some research after Senator Kelly said we were running low on munitions. And I know we might be, and maybe we're not. But one thing we're not running low on is torpedoes. And because we've only used two since World War II in hostile actions. I looked up World War II. We sank 529 oil tankers in World War II. Now, 105 of them were empty, but 425 tankers full of oil went to the bottom of the sea, and we didn't worry about the environmental damage. Can we just sink their Ghost Fleet if push comes to shove? I think we lost him.
Yes, I'd rather take it. Yeah.
You're back. I heard you say we'd. I heard you say we'd rather.
Yeah, yeah, I think we'd rather take them hostage take them as seize them, and then put prize crews on board and return them to ports, and then make decisions about how we deal with the cargo on board and the value of the ship. I don't think sinking them is necessary. We are strong enough and big enough and powerful enough a military. We have the right types of ships, ESBs, amphib ships, the right types of visit boarding, search and seizure teams to go around and grab these wherever we need to in the Indian Ocean or around the North Arabian Sea. So no need to sink them. Look, on occasion, ones will sink when we're trying to disable them. But from my point of view, we're doing the right thing.
If a ship gets past the blockade that is not capturable but is sinkable, would you let it go or would you sink it?
I'd sink it.
Okay. And do you think that's
If you need a longer
discussion
answer, that's what a blockade is. A blockade says you're going to be held accountable for trying to penetrate my blockade and run it. And boy, talk about, shooting one of the monkeys so the other get the message.
Well, tell me about what you think the rules are engagement for the boarding crews. Sinking a ship, and of course, I'm assuming we would give notice to the crew to get off of the ship, and then we would pick up survivors. But is our boarding crew in any danger from whoever is running an Iranian tanker? Would the IRGC put suicide vests on a boat?
Potentially, you hit right on the thing that worries me the most, which is not the whole crew. Most of the crew aren't even Iranian, and they certainly aren't committed, right? They're trying to make money, trying to, keep their families safe. But there, you could easily get the IRGC could place a crewman on board with malicious intent to attempt to approach, American forces and either shoot at them or detonate something. I'm not sure about a detonating vest if that's going to be their technique. I think they're more trying to shoot and kill. But in any case, our teams have to go down assuming the highest level of risk. And we've assessed the ship. We're watching the ship. We're looking at the images of everyone on board. We're being very careful. You can see it right here in the video you're running. So we're doing this. So from my perspective, you minimize the risk to force, the risk to the people, and ensure you get the mission accomplished. And I'm not worried. We have real professionals, whether they're special operating forces, Marines, or Coast Guardsmen. We have, or even naval personnel. We have a lot of people who are experienced at this, done scores of them, if not hundreds, particularly in the Coast Guard, and can handle any kind of risk situation.
So, Admiral, you've studied this regime for a long time. My friend Mark Levin posted on after the Iranians rejected whatever President Trump proposed, their National Security Council spokesperson came out and said the only option for America is to surrender. And Mark hit the rope. He said, "This is a death cult. People have to understand we're dealing with a death cult. These are not rational actors." I agree with that. Do you agree with our assessment that this isn't even North Korea? Because North Korea are atheists, they just want to stay alive. But the Iranian theocrats and the fanatics in the IRGC, they're fanatics.
Yeah, I'm glad you split that between the leadership, the autocrats, theocrats, and the people. The people I think of Iran are uniquely well educated and
Yes.
can be a very successful state. But the autocrats, I mean, they're locked in. They've made money. They've had power. Um, many of them have committed crimes for which they would be held accountable by a transition, by a change in regimes. So for them, this is existential. That's kind of how I treat it. It's existential, and existential people talk smack like the smack that got Mark Levine pissed off.
Well, so should we say nothing and just do things, or ought we to engage in educating the American people about the regime? Because I'm not sure
Yeah.
we've done enough of the fact that these are not rational actors.
I'm glad you brought that up. We have not, the president has got to talk more frequently about what this regime has done over 47 years, what they've done over 4 months, killing 32,000 people in 36 hours just three
Yep.
months ago. I mean, it's
Yep.
like ancient history now. Our European partners can barely remember it happened. There's some film of it right there. This was a dramatic event. This was killing on a speed and density, comparable to 1940s Germany. That's the last time it was like this. So, from my perspective, the president has got to, I think, explain who the adversary is. I know he knows it. I know the people around him know it, but I don't think he gets that the American people don't necessarily know it. And also as a reminder to our European partners that, that these, when you say, you two belligerents are equal, kind of the way Macron talks about it, we're not. There's a big difference between the two of us. And if you can't recognize it, you're not truly a democratic aspirant.
So, last question, Admiral. In terms of our European partners, uh, if they don't show up now, is that a significant blow, if not a permanent blow, to the alliance? If they don't show up now, they're not showing up when we really need them. I don't know how we count on them with China if they don't show up now.
This was a big deal. I want to say first, this is the worst, the perfect storm of events. One, President Trump, the stuff with Greenland was kind of unnecessary and did create friction. Two, they weren't briefed very well. We weren't pre-briefed at all. But three, they absolutely responded wrong. And you put those three things together in a blender and you get the condition we're at now where the president's frustrated. I'm glad he recognizes the difference between Poland and the Baltic states and the Western Europeans. And in
Yeah, the
fact, the
frontline
other
states
day,
are good.
averred, yeah, that he averred to potentially maybe those troops from Germany don't leave Europe, they go to Poland. That would be fantastic, especially the long range strike battalion that was coming in, because that's very useful. But my point on this is that you had a perfect storm there of not great things happening.
We'll come back to that in future weeks. Rear Admiral Mark Montgomery, Senior Fellow, retired United States Navy, Senior Fellow at the Foundation for Defense of Democracies. Follow him on X at Mark C. Montgomery. Thank you, Admiral. I'll be right back, America, with Alex Gray of American Global Security. Stay tuned.
The Hugh Hewitt Show, coming to you from the Relief Factor Studio.